So welcome to the Node.js Node add-on API team meeting for May 10th, 2024. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at the things we've tagged for milestone 11. So I'm going to open that up. Just give me once. Milestone 11. Okay. And I will share the screen. There we go. And yeah, if anybody sees somebody else joining, please let me know because I won't necessarily see that as easily. Let's start. Anything new people want to let everybody know about?
I have nothing.
Okay, if nothing new, let's take a look at, I think we've had a little bit about discussion on printing some warnings, but I don't think there's anything new to chat about this week. Similarly, I don't think I've heard anything on this one in terms of, Gabriel had done a little bit to help, but too new. Debug testing, haven't done anything. Stale issues, I don't think there's anything. Stop me if I'm going too fast, but I don't think there's anything on stale issues to chat about. I don't see any new ones there. So that takes us coverage. I think we mentioned last time the badge is on the README. I don't know, Kevin, if there's anything else that we should chat about or
No, I think this is pretty much done. Now it's just increasing the coverage based off of and analyzing the results.
yeah, I think last time we were like, should we leave this on or chatted a little bit about like, is it time to make like a more broader call, like, hey, here's something you could do to help out with. But I think we wanted to look a little bit at the like there's some common things that are causing a lot of the gap right now.
To interject,
Yep.
Changzong has
Oh,
joined.
yes. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you. So yeah, okay, let me promote him. Where is participants? Open that window. Come on. Ah, there we go. Okay. Promote it. So it was like I had the sense we wanted to understand a little bit better what we're what, like there's some common cases causing a lot of the coverage gap, right? So it'd be good to understand that and figure out what we thought was right to do before like trying to say like, hey, this is a good first issue kind of thing, or a place that people could easily get involved to help out in terms of closing the coverage.
And how do you propose we like create this analysis, or like what should it cover or something like that? Like what would be the next steps working towards that?
I think it's like I don't have a so we could, somebody could volunteer and go off and take a look and say like, well, okay, 20% of it is because like, and I'm making this up because I don't remember exactly what I think you were telling us, but like because the error path, right? And the way we do our error paths, like we just never hit those. So somebody could look at that and say, come up with a proposal. We could schedule like an hour to, or maybe we could use one of these meetings to say, like, let's use this whole meeting to just dive into that particular topic and brainstorm ideas. Um, like, that might be a good way is just to say, like, okay, next week, let's make that the focus of the meeting. We could do some brainstorming and then we can figure out if there's a path forward. Or if somebody's like, hey, no, I want to go look at it first, that's a good way to go too. So it's kind of that's as far as I've thought it through.
Okay. I could look at that, but there are some other issues that I think are more important that we can discuss going forward in the meeting.
Okay.
But
So
that
like
yeah,
if
that
you're
does make sense.
okay,
I
yeah,
think
like
it
if
makes sense to sort of for me to what I would propose I would do is go through the coverage report and sort of make an a a condensed report, if you will, as to why certain paths are not being taken and sort of give a percentage of what those paths are and go from there.
yeah, that would be great. Like if you're happy to add that on to your backlog of things to look at, that's a great way to move forward. So
Okay.
And we'll just maybe leave this open as a reminder that we should be doing stuff like that. So you can maybe just paste it if you do once you generate stuff, paste some stuff into that issue as the like, here's the analysis.
Mhm.
Okay, sounds good. I think that covers everything except for looking into issues in the repos, but you mentioned a few things there. So will we cover those by looking at the issues, or do you want to jump into those before we go and look at the
We
issue?
can go into issues. Yeah,
Okay,
there. Mhm.
so I'm going to go to GitHub and add on API. Oops, I gotta see Gabriel's there now. Great. Okay, so if we look at issues,
And it's this last one here.
okay, yep.
Perfect timing for Gabe to
Yeah,
join.
right. Okay, yeah, because I know
Uh,
Gabriel had been sort of looking at that one for a while.
yes. I guess this is the PR, but if you go to it's linking, it's at a link's at the bottom here.
Okay, sorry.
And a little up where the comment is, and a little more up.
Okay,
Yeah. Object wrap has a memory leak bug.
right. Okay,
Yeah, so a user was trying to use Node add-on API with experimental and ran into a compilation error. If you
okay,
scroll sort of down at the bottom, because this is basically the issue that has stemmed this whole thing, right? So from 2022.
okay.
But
This was quite
but
a while
yeah,
ago. Yeah, okay,
yeah. So this is the reason why we introduced sort of the no GC concept.
right.
Um, so now somebody commented, if you scroll a little up for the actual error, a little more, a little more, a little more. Uh, this is just how people. Yes, so this is basically where he's saying that he's having some issues because he is using an API experimental with Node add-on API, and we
Okay,
don't have that support yet. But then I pointed to Gabe's PR,
yeah,
and now that Gabe has joined, I think it'd be worthwhile to sort of talk about where that stands, because his, that PR should be able to fix this user's issue. And I
Yeah,
think the
so
compilation error is maybe the next comment or so. It's somewhere in this thread.
right. So yeah, I'm still waiting for it to go through the release process so we can get all those builds to pass. That's basically where that's at. That's why I added those checkboxes there in my comment on the PR to see it's kind of a progress indicator there. Um and yeah, so that's last time I checked. I haven't seen if there have been any
oh,
releases.
sorry, I'm trying to. So, yeah.
What are you looking for in
Looking
this?
for the for Gabriel's PR. Maybe if I just go
Oh,
back,
that's
this one
here,
right
That's
right
here,
here.
this
here.
one,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
Yes.
this
Yeah.
right here. Yeah. Yeah, so it's in 22 and for 20 it's going to appear in the next version, and for 18 it hasn't been backported yet. So that's as of last week.
I see. Okay. All right.
So
Well,
once that lands, we'll be able to move forward with the experimental support PR.
Okay. I will go ahead and put a comment stating that in that thread to give a update to that person then.
does that mean you can't, like today, you can't use experimental without, you can't use Node add-on API with experimental without turning off the Node GC option?
Or if you're using finalizers, certain types of finalizers,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you can make it work. You can turn on experimental, back out of that option. And so there's at least a workaround, right?
Right, but then you get back to the case where you're going to have the
Yeah.
asynchronous finalizations running.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So right, exactly. So
which is what people want to avoid. So they opt in to running experimental, but now they cannot compile their code using
Yeah.
the feature,
Right,
basically.
We're still working on the fix for that memory leak, basically. That's the
right.
summary, I think.
Is there any way to land your PR but only have it apply to V22? I guess probably not, right?
Not without introducing version checking, I
Right.
don't think.
Okay. So this is something where there is we would want this like that PR to land sooner than later, right?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't know exactly where that PR is at. Like, I don't know if there are any more unexpected errors because I mean,
Right.
it's failing now. So until I can be sure that the root cause of that failure has been addressed, I cannot really uh, be sure that I have made all the changes to know that on API that need to be made. Because like we ideally want to support the Node.js case, and that means weaving these types through our code base and I don't think I've done that fully. I've done some of it, but you know there might still be corner cases that I haven't been able to sort of suss out because it doesn't compile at all. You know,
Right.
so yeah, that's the thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, can we? Okay, yeah. So can we see at the bottom um, what the situation is, where it passed and where it didn't? Like just the build list there,
Oh, right.
like which
Okay.
builds failed.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I took a look at the failure.
Yeah,
It's
interesting because some 20s are but working.
Yeah, and it was failing in running the external finalizer because the finalizer was actually calling into JavaScript, or at least that's what they
Oh,
are.
yeah. Right. Okay, but then this
So
should
then,
this should just call an API Node API post finalizer, right?
right, that's what I thought. So I was
Oh,
also a little confused.
okay. So there's two levels of fixes. One level of fixing it is just to do what we've done so far, which is to run the finalizers async. That's the easy fix, right? Where you just drop in Node API post finalizers all over the place, and it behaves just as it did before, including the bug, but at
Mhm.
least it compiles and the unit tests pass. And then there's a second level of fixing it, which is to do the hard work of either offering a new API, introducing a Node.js finalizer into Node add-on API, or ideally, and this is probably impossible, but I'm still kind of holding out a glimmer of hope to detect which finalizer to uh, add, depending on whether depending on the body of the finalizer provided by the user. You know, like using some magical type inference, which I'm not sure it can be done. You know.
Mhm.
Isn't this telling us our code is wrong? Like, wasn't the whole point that this compile error tells us we're doing something we shouldn't do?
Yeah,
So, like, we should probably change it. Even we should like without the new APIs, there's a way to do the right thing, I think, right? So maybe we should just change the test to do the right thing without doing it the efficient way, if
So,
you know what I mean, right?
so from my
oh, I
understanding
see.
of Gabe's PR was that in order to make everything compile and run fine, is that the existing finalizer callbacks, which use the non-const env, would be wrapped in the post finalize callback.
Yeah.
So what was supposed to happen is everything that was working fine should continue working because we're just running the finalizers asynchronous anyways. And if our code and our tests were coded correctly because they were passing, because they were using async finalizers, which was okay at the time, and now this is failing, even though we should be just wrapping all of the finalizers to be ran async. So that's why I was a little confused why this was failing. And I originally thought it's because, oh, maybe external didn't have the post API post finalized wrapper, but it does. So that's where I was a little confused. But I think it maybe might need some time to relook and see what's going on with that.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm also a little confused that do we have any that on 20 that passed? Because technically it's not released yet on 20, so okay, that's
Okay, so
21.
it's, well, I don't see it
No,
running.
no, they got skipped.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably because this one failed. Like,
Oh
I think
yeah,
it
and then the
basically
rest got
says,
skipped. Yeah.
if I
Fast
fail
fail.
this, I'm gonna like not run anything else, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah, so basically the reason why it needs to wait for this backport is that I cannot, like, without these flags, I cannot distinguish whether, you know, the whether I can whether I need to use the post finalizer or not, right? Like if the flag is experimental, then I need to use, no, I'm sorry. If the flag is experimental and we have the feature flag saying that we have no
Right,
GC finalizers, then I need to use post finalizer. But if I don't have these flags, then I can't tell if NAPI experimental refers to the version of NAPI
right,
experimental in like node 15 or 14 or 8. We had an API experimental there too. So I can't distinguish. That's why we need these flags backported and the fixes and everything.
right. We could we just define the backout flag? Um, like, because there's a
Oh,
flag that we could define the backup flag, which would have no effect if it's a version that doesn't have it, or it would
mm.
be backed out. And then that would at least let us have tests which run
Oh, that's a
experimental,
good
right?
point. Yeah, we do what add-on maintainers do, which is define the backout flag,
Yeah,
and then everything works as it did.
right,
And then later on we do the work and we remove the backout flag.
right. And then your
Yeah,
PR, which does all this work, would remove that. And so like,
yeah,
but that would at least like get the testing that runs experimental in place, which might be, I that doesn't solve any of the problem here though, right? Because like I guess what I now
yeah,
understand is the fundamental thing is we put this stuff in for because the person opened that issue, we're not in a state yet where they can actually leverage it
yeah,
because yeah, okay.
yep.
So our ask to say, can you try it out is kind of like there is no easy way to try it out other than like applying this PR
Yeah.
themselves and then seeing and then using 21 or 22. We should probably add 22 to our matrix if we
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah. So that's basically where that's at. Well, hopefully the release process will catch up and then we can do the actual work.
Okay. Well, would it be possible to sort of divide and conquer and work on the PR as is for 20 and 22 and get those working as expected and then sort of wait at that point for 18's backport? You know what I'm trying to say is,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we add the backout flag, then yes, because then
yeah, okay.
you're essentially back in like pre no GC world if you add the backout flag.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
then actually if we add the backout flag, then experimental, then it's very simple. That we can land a PR that says if def an API experimental add then define the backout flag and that's it. Oh, actually that's a good point. Yeah, maybe that's the PR we should land first. It's just if def an API experimental add the backout flag, define the backout flag and that's it. And then that'll make it work with experimental for everybody, even without any further changes, right? Because it basically takes the teeth out of no GC. And that's a
Right.
small,
Okay. So basically, because Node add-on API doesn't have the things to support it properly, that might make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then my PR, it would probably conflict with my PR. That PR would conflict with my PR, but what I would do is rebase my PR and just remove the adding of the backout flag, and then continue testing and continue waiting for things to land in core, and then that would unblock people who use an API experimental.
Do we know that they have plans to land it to start it? Like, what if it never happens?
Yes. So 20 is already like it's already in v20.x staging, so that's just waiting for a release. And for 18, it applies cleanly. I checked because they've pulled in some more Node API stuff, and I wanted to make sure that it doesn't need a backport PR. So I know for a fact that it applies cleanly, or at least it did last week. I mean, they might have pulled something, but Node API doesn't get that many changes now, so it should be okay. And so it's just a matter of it landing, I think, in 20, and it needs to wait 2 weeks after that, if I understand the release process correctly. And then the next 18 release is going to have it.
So should I put in this like that?
Sounds good.
Into your matrix, like the backport is complete, or no?
No, the backport was not complete as of last week. So I can pull it and update this.
Okay, but I guess okay, so it's backport. I was thinking this is the waiting, like you said, 18, it didn't need a backport, right? It just needed to be cherry picked across.
What I mean by backport complete is somebody cherry picked it.
Okay.
That's the
Okay.
most trivial
Right.
backport,
Yeah,
right?
okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that's like it's not yet in v18.x staging. Nobody has cherry picked it yet. Whereas for 20, it got cherry picked, but not yet released.
Okay. And it might be worth like let's look to see GitHub.
Yeah.
And then issues, there's like a release plan for 18.
Yep. I should be right at the bottom.
Okay, so like it might be worth like mentioning to Richard that we really want that PR.
I think I did at the bottom, but please
Okay,
double
maybe
check.
you already have. So yeah, like that. Okay.
Yeah, I did mention something here, and he said that, okay, so yeah, okay. Yep, hi folks. Okay. Oh, here we go. It will dep okay, here you go. May we please have this is the one that restores
Right, okay.
yeah, that. And so yeah.
Okay, as long as like that, yeah. I just wanted to make sure where there was like the explicit ask to say, yeah, like we'd like this one, and
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
so I'm sort of rattling the cage about this one.
Okay, good. So yeah, it's okay. So back to the actual issue. So we went to no, I'm in the wrong place now. Requests here.
Ooh, wait a second. I think we have the backout flag in 18. We just don't have that second PR, which is to restore the experimental, or sorry, restore the thread safe function to regular finalizer instead of node.js. That's the only thing that's missing in 18. If we don't have the backout flag, then adding the backout flag won't help. Let me double check that.
So we managed to turn on the node.js without the backup flag?
I have to double check because I don't remember if the backout flag. I think that was part of the original node.js PR, right? Because we added the backout flag as part of the PR review, right? So
Yeah, I think it was like
I
that
think they're atomic that way.
hopefully they should be like we broke you, but you can get out of it, right? Should have gone
Yeah.
together.
All right, let's see. Git fetch origin staging. Let's see if there's been any movement on that. Oh, there has been. Good. Git reset hard. Add. Okay, and now let's see, git log one line. Let's see if we have any Node API movement here. Oh, wait, git fetch origin tags. I don't think there's been a release, but who knows? No, there hasn't been. There's only been 20 releases, but not that. Okay, so let's see, Node API. Whoa, whoa, make TSFN accept an API finalized once more. Well, I got good news.
Okay.
The quote unquote backport to 18 has been completed, so we can add a nice fat green check
Okay.
marks there.
That's good.
Sweet. Okay, now for that backout flag. Source, where was that? JS native API types, I think. Yes. Okay, Node API, experimental Node GC, and opt out. Okay, yes. So we have the backout flag all the way down to 18. Wait. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Do we? Yes, we do, because, okay, good. So then I will make a trivial PR against Node add-on API, which says if def and API experimental define the backout flag. And then that should pass on all. And then we can actually turn on the experimental matrix. So the part of the current PR which changes the GitHub workflow thingamajigger to add all the experimental variants should be enableable using this trivial PR. Because yes, we're running against experimental, not really, but because we're backing out of everything, but at least we've got the workflow going. And that might uncover any unforeseen problems with that, if
Right.
any.
Yep.
And then that's a quote fairly trivial PR, still adds value in that it turns on the matrix, and then we can rebase my PR to actually start, doing no GC stuff.
Right.
And go
Okay.
from
So
there.
the net is like if you're getting the like the memory leak-ish behavior,
Yeah.
like doesn't fix it yet, but yeah, it would be a
Right.
step in the direction. And then once this PR can land in full,
Yeah.
it will address that. Okay.
And just sort of fair warning, even the PR that is currently there will not fix the memory leak issue, because as of now, all it does is, instead of doing the asynchronous finalizers in core, it does the asynchronous finalizers explicitly in Node add-on API. So the memory issue is still there.
Right.
Fixing that, I'm not even sure we can do behind people's backs. We might just need to give them a new interface saying, look, if you want synchronous
Right.
finalization, use this method instead of that method.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay.
So, but hey, we're making progress
Yeah.
as much as we can.
Okay. So I'm just thinking, like, have we properly answered the questions on this one, or like I see, okay, so Kevin, you've certainly mentioned, like, okay, you're right, it doesn't support the Node.js finalizers. So is the recommendation just to wait until that flows through?
To fix the bug, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, was it actually a memory leak or just a deferred memory leak, in that, like, well, the GC will clean it up whenever, right?
Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're in a busy loop producing 100,000 objects,
Right.
you're gonna give the GC a run for its money the next time it runs.
Right. So that's like, we're improving things significantly, but like that's the way the GC works, depending on how things are set up. So okay. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, Kevin, have we covered what you wanted to discuss, and is there any follow-on from the discussion that we should take?
Yeah, I feel I have it in my notes, give an update in here after the
Okay.
meeting.
Perfect. Okay.
In my understanding, as soon as we enable experimental with this small new PR, they must be able to use this new API to kind of do this synchronous memory clean, right?
Well, we don't have any Node add-on API for it, so it's not wrapped in C++. But it's true that they can always like go down to and use core APIs. I mean that's one of the central tenets of Node add-on APIs, that it interoperates with the API below it. But the code will or may look different once we add support for it in Node add-on API.
Right, but at least they must be able to do some workarounds starting from this point.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
would be, although if we've got the define that turns it off, then they might
Yeah.
not be
It's
able to
turn
use
off
it.
a new type, Node.js type. Potentially, it's pretty much for people to use asynchronous finalizers. Everything what they need to have experimental running. It's
Right. Okay.
Wait a minute.
only
Wait a minute. That's a good
strictness.
point. That's a good point. If you compile with experimental, the NAPI version reported by the resulting binary will be 4 billion or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then at runtime it will turn on the strict behavior. And so oof, if you yeah, because like if you build your add-on with experimental, then it's going to crash, because it's going to say, that error that we just saw.
Well, but so I guess the question is, could you today say turn on experimental, use the backout flag to say don't apply the no GC part, right?
Yeah, and then it will
But then
compile, but
make
it'll crash. Yeah,
okay, well that's not what we wanted.
yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. So
so
if
have
you
we broken everybody? Really? Like,
no, the gate for all of this is NAPI experimental, and so that's fair game. Breakage is fair game if you turn on NAPI experimental. But
but
basically what
we had this flag to say no, we haven't broken you, right? And that's what we just
oh
told
crap,
people
that's
to
right.
use.
Oh,
The flag says we don't break you at compile time.
yeah.
But runtime will be broken.
Oh boy.
And this way we're missing these feature flags, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's true. That's a tough one. Oh, wait, hold on. Use the NAPI variant to detect whether it should be on and add it to the defines if an API version is set to an API version experimental. I'm trying to figure out if experimental will automatically set the version to that, okay, not 4 billion, but 2 billion.
Yeah, it sets it. Well, yeah, experimental. You turn on experimental, your version goes to the highest number.
But is that decision made in core is what I'm wondering about.
Yes, so technically
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
core.
Yeah.
We saying if it's experimental, then we enable synchronous finalizers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a bit of a wrinkle, because yeah, you'll compile, but you still need to do the work. So there's no opting out of the work. And not only do you need to do the work, you don't have the, like you know that on API, you don't have the APIs to do the work. You have to go to core to do the work. Ugh.
So basically, we've broken experimental completely.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, despite our best efforts and despite the opt-out flag.
So should we back that out?
Well, I
Like,
mean, if we back it out and you turn on experimental, you're going to compile without having to worry about no GC, but you're still going to crash if you don't do the work of making sure your finalizers are synchronous. Now, if you whether you compile successfully because we backed out the typing changes, or you compile successfully because we added the backout flag, either way, you're going to compile successfully and still going to crash at runtime. So I don't think we need to back out the typing changes because we haven't made things worse. You've crashed. You've been crashing at runtime with experimental even before the typing changes, right?
Okay, I'm trying. So like, it comes back to like, have we broken people whose code wasn't crashing before we started this whole thing?
Yes, we have.
Right. So that's what we shouldn't have done, right? Like we didn't want to. We don't want people who had perfectly good code that was working to no longer have perfect. Like there's people who are using experimental. Their modules were working fine. They upgrade their node version, stops working. That's what we wanted to avoid, right? Like, yeah, it's experimental, but we didn't want to break people. That's why we had the flag to say, okay.
Yeah, but the flag is not enough. Yeah, I think. Wait a second.
So
Wait
speaking,
a second.
we never promise that people using experimental they kind of continue to work, because experimental we always add new functionality, right? So specifically to not break people, we introduce this mechanism. People specify the version they want to stay on. Like people can simply say, okay, I'm on version 8, so this new kind of synchronized finalizers will be never picked up.
Yeah, I think the commitment you're talking about, Michael, is above and beyond
sure, yeah, like
API stability, which is a fair feature to have.
We can break experimental, but like we basically, like in the previous discussions, we said, well, no, if you put in this flag, we didn't break it, right? Like, but it seems like we may have been incorrect on that, right? Like,
yes. Wait, hold on. No. Yeah, well, we are incorrect, and as it stands, yes, we break people, but can we? Okay. We could. I think we could fix this in core, because in core we could say if the backup flag is present, then don't set the NAPI version to infinity.
Well, that changes the whole like.
Yeah, but then you don't
get. The whole model is that you've got that new, like what we'd want is like you you set this flag, and therefore it doesn't take effect, right?
I think we're heading more and more towards Vladimir's idea of having runtime flags, because then we can, this would have fixed that.
I think it sounds like we're still okay for like when we actually turn this on for real, right? Like when you
for sure. Yeah, we're definitely gonna be okay.
Version, we're fine. So that's fine. It's just like we really wanted to avoid breaking the world.
Yeah.
Even if you were using experimental, even though we made it the default, right? Versus having to turn it on. Like we said, hey, we'll turn it on by default, but we'll at least give you a way to get it to get out of it.
Wait. Hold on a second. I think this might still work. Because an API experimental controls the contents of the header files, right? And so if you have it on, no matter what your Node API version, you're going to have all the new APIs. So if we add code that says an API experimental is on, but the backout flag is also on, then don't set the NAPI version to infinity, set it to the latest release. Then you're still going to have all the look and feel of your header will be as though you're experimental, but the version announced by your add-on will be the last stable. And so at runtime, Vladimir's code is going to pick it up, and it's going to go with the asynchronous finalizer, and it's not going to crash.
But then,
yeah, I'd have to.
The caveat here is that let's say we add these if defs, right? That's going to land in on node main, and it's got to make its way all the way through all the releases. And meanwhile, people are still broken. So which one is going to be faster? Fixing it or adding this additional hoop that the code is jumping through? I think at this point it might just be faster to just fix it because the final piece required for fixing has just been cherry picked to 18. If it gets released there, and if we get a release of 20, we're good. So yes, we broke people, but they were already defining experimental. We try to do one better than our ABI stable promise. On the first iteration, we failed. Next time we do this, we'll do it better.
I'm still trying to follow the problem is that the synchronous finalizer, if they before that change, they could have run JavaScript code, right? And it would have been fine. Is that
yeah.
So we basically changed that if you turn on experimental, that no longer works.
Yeah.
So that's the point where we needed a backout that we didn't include.
Yeah. Which we did later, but it turns out the backout is compile time only. And it'll still break you at runtime. Moral of the story and lesson for future backouts is that we also need to worry about the reported version of the add-on when we do this. We need to keep the reported version as the last release rather than infinity. And this only applies to situations where we change existing behavior. And this, I think, is the first time we've really, really changed existing behavior is with these finalizers, because it was quite an urgent issue. So yeah.
I think ideally, if we're changing this, like if we in experimental, we're introducing some behavior change, it would be nice to also introduce some kind of runtime feature flag, which people can turn on. Because technically, a report in previous version is not so good because technically it also disables all other experimental functions. Right?
Fair, yes. Feature flag, yes.
But we also people introduced meantime a lot of other experimental APIs. They all be disabled, right?
Yeah.
So for each new behavior, it would be nice to have temporary flags. Like I think last time change on point was not to introduce these behavior flags because with time we will have too many of these flags. But what if there will be always experimental flags?
Yes. And you know what's best about this? The meaning of the different bits is different depending on what the base version of node is, right? So we wouldn't have to bump the version to infinity. We could say it's version 8 plus bit 0 plus bit 1 plus bit 3. And the meaning of bit 0, bit 1, bit 3 is whatever feature, right? Now, if you have version 9 plus bit 0 plus bit 1 plus bit 3, that means different features. Because, the meaning of experimental after version 9 is different from the meaning of experimental after version 8. And so it's not like we're going to run out of feature bits. In version 500, we're not going to run out of feature bits as long as we don't introduce more than 64 behavior changing features between versions of Node API. If we ever do that, then we need to really think about what we're doing.
Yeah, that's one point. And then another one point that we talked about previously is that using growing feature bits might increase our test maintenance, because using feature bits, it means we have to test a matrix of feature bits. Like say one is enabled, another one is disabled. So we have to think about what feature bits we have to consider to preserve over the released versions.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
But I think as a temporary mean, to release out experimental features as a feature bit, that could work. So we will not accumulating feature bits along the time. Yeah, I don't have a really good solution for this and at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, right now we only have one experimental feature that would have required a feature bit normally, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you just said drives home the point that, you know, adding even one of those bits needs to be really, really well thought out, and it needs to be it needs to have the kind of urgency that this memory leak had, right? Like this is a very bad bug,
Yeah.
right? So we're not going to lightly just go and sprinkle feature bits all over the place. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Oh, and by the way, I just realized I think we can do this with one field, right? Because we don't need like an extra field in the module registration, because we can have like the lowest bits be like the Node API version and the highest bits be like the feature bits. And so, okay, we don't get 64, but we've just established that even two of them is a lot of work. So I think we can shove this in the reported version at runtime, both the feature flags and the version, and we just do more complex processing and bit shifting on the version that is reported by the add-on. So we don't need to worry about like the structure of the, you know, the Node API add-on structure and all that.
So basically, we can do like we can say that version is really kind of just kind of bitmap. If we have this highest bit set, we say it's experimental, then pretty much we can use remaining bits to indicate for some features.
Yeah.
And pretty much experimental will be anything which is higher than a certain number. In fact, it will correspond like bit 1000. That's right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We kind of our experimental version would actually encode some experimental bits.
Yes, exactly. So the version of the add-on would look really funky in decimal, but who cares?
So if I summarize where we're at, you can turn on experimental and you can use the opt-out define, which will let you continue to work okay if you're not using finalizers.
Yes.
Right?
Well,
like,
if you're not calling JavaScript from finalizers, right?
Right. Okay. If you're not calling JavaScript from finalizers, but I'm just trying to work through that. Like how many people did we break? So like, if we just by default with experimental turned on, everybody's broken, right? Because basically, well, maybe only if you're using finalizers.
Yes, only if you're
Okay.
calling JavaScript from finalizers.
So the Node GC only affects those people, right? Like it's
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So only if you're using finalizers, but if you are using finalizers, there's basically no choice but to
Stop
change.
calling. Basically, the work you need to do is stop calling JavaScript from finalizers. And oh, by the way, we have a new API you can use to not do that anymore.
Right. But the real problem is anybody using Node add-on API is broken with no answer. I'm thinking, right? Because what can they do? Right? Like
they would have to go down to core level APIs.
Yes, they would have to call Node API post finalizer themselves. They would have to like sift through the body of their finalizer, figure out which of those calls, I don't know, sets a property on an object, creates a new object, whatever they do. And I agree, and Node add-on API, it's much harder to figure that out, because you say like, you know, A bracket B equals C, and you don't realize that that's really a JavaScript API call, because it looks so native, right? But anyway, so they would have to partition their finalizers into things that are safe and things that are not safe, and they would have to provide a function pointer, nice C compatible function pointer, nothing funky like functors, and well, lambdas would work as long as they don't capture anything, and move all that code that was in their finalizer into this indirected finalizer That's the work they would have to do in order for their add-on not to crash at runtime.
Right. So that sounds like a bit of a high bar.
Yeah.
You've already been using Node add-on API. So core wise, it's a pretty straightforward, you just do a wrapper thing and you're done, right? Like at least the story there is like, yeah, you can leave experimental, like, okay, yeah, we did say maybe you get broken if you got experimental on. So you can turn off experimental, great, you're fixed. Or you can do this wrapper, which is not that much code, right?
For people using the core,
we chose to force people into one of those two. What we didn't realize was we broke the add-ons and there's no real easy fix. Like Node add-on API add-ons. Like, so basically there's, experimental is not really an option if you're using Node add-on API, anymore. Like that's what you're working on fixing, right? But
yeah.
So how easy is that? Like, so you're saying, does this PR you already had fix that?
Yes. What this PR does is it does the Node API post finalizer for you, meaning you will be fixed, you will not crash, you will compile successfully, but you will still have a memory leak.
Right, but at least we haven't, that's okay. It's the same as it was before. So
exactly,
really,
yes.
It sounds like the only way to get the unfortunate side is, and you've got to move up to the latest version of Node add-on API or else you're in trouble, right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So, but that seems like our only real way out of this right now is to like expedite getting that PR landed, right? Because then people who are using Node add-on API, it's like, okay, well, they're back to like it being okay if you've turned on experimental. Hopefully, like the worst case, I guess, that I'm thinking is like somebody needed something that was only available in experimental.
Yeah.
But they have a finalizer. Now there isn't an answer for that, right? Until this gets
that's right.
Way through the.
There is an opportunity here too before we forget, and I think I'll file an issue in core against this, which is to introduce this feature bit thing by reusing the version field of the registration structure, because I like this whole process that we're going through is also a learning experience because we've never broken behavior before, and we have just learned a few things. Like we need a backout flag, but we also need that flag. And I know, Vladimir, you've been harping on about this for a long time, that we need it at runtime, not just at compile time. And you are so right. So I think we should record this in an issue so that we can have a PR later.
Have those changes already made it into 2018?
Oh yeah, I mean, Vladimir's change is pretty old. It's the the quote unquote syntactic sugar that's not so old.
Right. Okay. So basically it's not like the things that are going to, the things that are going to land soon in 20 and in 18, if people are like, I see more breakage, they can turn off that breakage, right? Because the backout worked, like there's nothing in those PRs that are queued for 20 and 18 that are going to further.
No, yeah.
Right.
No,
like
there isn't.
That's what I'm just like, okay, so they've already been backported. They're out there for a while. We haven't heard lots of PRs and issues and complaints.
To be perfectly honest, we haven't heard of a lot of add-ons which are crashing that weren't crashing. Maybe a couple, but I mean, it hasn't been like a maelstrom of bugs. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, like what I was saying, we haven't seen a lot of impact versus the default of turning on the Node GC. I guess that, like, if people actually failed to compile, that was because even if they had working code, we were forcing them into that, right?
Yeah.
And then they can back out of it. So whatever breakage we unintentionally introduced, that's past. We haven't seen a whole bunch of things. So maybe it wasn't so bad, right? Like, okay, now the new thing is like, okay, you can back out the new stuff, which we saw a few people run into. and we're close to getting the resolution in anyway, right? So
yeah.
okay, and so it's like, okay, for the future, we just gotta, again, if we're, keep the focus on like how is this going to affect people? Do we want to, like, yes, experimental we can, and we could have chosen just say, yeah, it's fine. We tried to avoid it. We'll just have to think more in the future, like, did we really avoid it or not?
Yeah. Our process, we were, as they say, we were kind of building the airplane as we were flying, right? Because the process of making behavioral changes in such a way that that it doesn't affect existing add-ons is something that, or the procedure for introducing such changes is one that we developed as we were introducing the changes. So now that we have done this, and we have recorded a lot of this, like the backout flags and the feature flags and all that, we have recorded that in the Node API development process document. The final piece of the puzzle, I think we just discovered today, which is to manipulate the version that is being reported by the add-on. I think that seems like the final piece of the puzzle. So
that may be one option. There may be other ones, but like some way that you can disable something at runtime in addition to
that. Whether we do it via the version number or some other thing, this idea is now fairly firmly established, I think. So I think I'm going to file an issue about that.
If you remember, like we at some point retired the whole this add-on registration structure altogether. So technically today, in order for people to create the add-on, they effectively need to have two different callbacks. One of them pretty much initializes add-on, and second one it can ask what's your version. If
great.
we implement this version callback, we always give them version 8. So technically, even people say, I'm using experimental API, I guess in reality, they're using version 8 always. So it probably was one of the reasons why we didn't break that many people. If people didn't recompile code using our new headers, which introduces this version callback. So pretty much all previously compiled code continues to work as is, what I'm trying to say. Okay. Because people don't have this callback yet. Only if they recompile code, we introduce this kind of callback method, and we have new version of the report version, new way to report version. Sorry.
Okay.
And that's what you use. That's what you use to turn on this experimental bit.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, actually.
Yeah, we'd have to
people
double
already
check.
use experimental. It's very complicated in terms of like getting it straight. But I think the other thing it shows us is like Gabriel, your work to turn on testing for experimental.
Yeah.
Is really important, because I think that we would have caught this.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because if we'd made changes on main and we'd run we had the testing that ran, I think we would have found pretty quickly, it's like, well, wait a second, we didn't quite get it right.
Right. Yeah. Well,
so anyway, that's
better late than never.
Yeah. Okay. So I think good discussion, but I think it sounds like the path that it's on is the path that we've got now. The good news is, like, like you said, we haven't had like a flood of bugs way back when. So like, hopefully I guess there's not a lot of finalizers who are running JavaScript code.
I think that's the crux of it.
And those may not have turned on experimental, which would be fine, right? And so like there's a small intersection of where it really would have been an issue. We had a larger intersection with the most recent PR, because like even if your code was not doing that, you would run into issues, right?
Yes.
So, and there's a backout for that. So for that, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And we're almost at the end of the landing of stuff, and then we'll be back into a sort of happy state.
Yep.
Whew.
Yeah, it's a doozy.
Okay.
I know we are over time,
Yep.
but there's one more issue that I just would like to point
Sure.
out, and then people can take a look at it at their own time. It's actually on the Node API headers
Oh,
repo. Because we haven't done a release on this
Yep.
for a while now. And if you go to the issues, we've been talking about automation, this
Yep.
bottom here. Nick and I have been going back and forth, and I've outlined a plan in one of my most recent comments there. So if we can just, take a look at this and put any comments in, basically, it's using GitHub Actions, and there would be two additional ones. One that sort of is the prepare release that has that step, and the other one publishes to NPM. So if you could take a look and give any comments, that'd be great.
awesome.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I kind of like the PR. Like, you don't really have to do it's. We have the opportunity to look at the PR and say yes, but then that's you've reduced the amount of work to something quite small, right?
Yeah, and basically it's I don't want it 100% automatic because bad things can happen 100% automatic. So but this sort of breaking it up into one step. You click accept the PR with the packaged version change and the README change and everything, and then it will just get published. So I think that's the approach that I'm taking.
Okay.
Okay. So this is something that I'm working on now.
Okay. No, that's
Awesome.
good. That would be good to. And I even I don't know if you could include something like an app mention to the node, to the node add-on team, so we get like a ping.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah.
In the PR, rather than it just be a PR in the repo that if you're following the repo, you get it. But this would be more like if I know I follow all the repos, but I know also people will just follow, hey, tell me when I'm mentioned. That would be a more direct app mention if it's easy, right? I don't think that's a showstopper one way or the other, just another idea.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's all that I want to point out that I wanted to bring up.
Okay, so at this point we are over time, so I guess I'll just kick it to is there anything else we should discuss this week versus deferring to next week? Okay, well, if not, let's then get back next week. And thanks for everybody for the discussion and time. We'll see everybody in GitHub next time.
Yep.
See you
See
later.
y'all then.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.